Hello, I am the Walkthrough 184, and I've been doing a bunch of reviews, and I kinda wanted to do something different, and this was one of the topics that I wanted to really do, so here goes nothing. Alright, to preface this video, I am an avid achievement hunter ever since I got my Xbox 360 back in 2009, which funnily enough is also the same year that I started this YouTube channel. And as I'm recording this, I'm almost at 10,000 achievements unlocked, and over 210,000 gamer score. Now, as an achievement hunter, I would eventually find myself signing up for the website True Achievements in 2014, and, well, they have a whole different sort of scoring system. A scoring system based off of how much gamer score the achievement is worth times the ratio amount of how many people have unlocked it based off of how many people have played the game. So in other words, the higher ratio and score an achievement has, the less people have unlocked it. And currently I have a ratio of 2.61 and a TA score of 554,000. Now I managed to get that high of a score and ratio because I tend to go after achievements that not many of people have unlocked. Whether it be because that they are very difficult achievements, or they have a huge time investment, or a little bit of both. And I thought it'd be neat to do a video where I discuss my top 10 hardest achievements unlocked based off of their TA score. And with that all out of the way, let's jump right into this with the first achievement, Stampers Forever in Rare Replay. And in order to unlock this achievement, you must earn the most coveted title in the game by acquiring all 330 stamps found within it. The Rare Replay is a collection of 30 games made by Rare in honor of their 30th anniversary. And since Rare was acquired by Microsoft back in 2002 and they never sold them, that meant that this was one of the big exclusivity titles for the Xbox One. And I believe it still is, but I could be wrong about that. It was also the first game to utilize backwards compatibility on the system. Weirdly enough, this is also the only game I can think of where a selling point in the advertisements was the fact that you could unlock 10,000 gamer score in it, and sitting on top of that difference of 9,850 was this achievement for unlocking most of it. I do say most since there are some achievements that aren't tied to stamps in this game, and when it comes to the backwards compatible games, you only have to get 75% of gamer score in them to get all the stamps. But as for the stamps that are a part of the games connected to the actual main game disc, they all have each either 5 or 10 stamps to get. And there's always one for completing the game, and then there's a whole bunch where you need to just complete certain requirements. Like, if I remember correctly, there's one for Cobra Triangle where you have to gain 1 million points cumulatively, and one for RC Pro AM where you have to also cumulatively win 30 races, but that's all just for the main game, as there are also stamps that you have to collect through the challenge playlists as well as the snapshot playlists. The snapshots are usually just random scenarios for whatever game you're in, and you just have to complete it before you die or end up losing all your time. While the challenge playlists are just 5 sets of snapshots that you have to do all at once with only 3 tries. Now, with all that said, I would say that this isn't necessarily a hard achievement to unlock. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are definitely hard parts hidden within, like needing to get the A ranks in Cameo, completing either Perfect Dark Games on Perfect Agent, just beating Battletoads, or even the aforementioned challenges and snapshots. But the real challenge here is just the huge time investment, and if you're really willing to put in all that time. And as someone who has put in all that time, I will say there are definitely both positives and negatives from it. The big negative is that you have to play games that are just bad or you don't like, all the way to fruition. I mean, for me, some of the games that I really didn't like playing was Lunar Jetman, Saberwolf, Jet Force Gemini, Cameo, and Perfect Dark Zero. But on the flip side, for positive aspects, you are not only playing some of the greatest games of all time, but also some hidden gems as well. I mean, some of the games that I discovered and ended up loving were Jetpack, Slalom, RC Pro AM, Viva Pinata and its sequel, Grab by the Ghoulies, and Blast Corps. I mean, I love some of these games so much that I actually went out and got real copies of them. Now, one bone that the developers did throw is the availability of cheats and save states within the older games, and as expected, they do make the older games much easier pills to swallow. Except for Battletoads, that game is still hard even with all this help. Now, unfortunately, these cheats are not in every single game, they're only in the games before the Nintendo 64 era, so when you get that far, you're just at the mercy of whatever game you're currently on. But when it comes down to the later games, more specifically the backwards compatible games, there is a sort of bonus that you can achieve going into them, although this bonus does only come from a luck factor. This factor being whether or not you have played the game previously and already unlocked enough achievements to get all the stamps in it. The only game I lucked out on was Banjo-Kazooie, but even then I still replayed it, and that's really all there is to say about this achievement. But as for the collection as a whole currently, there is nothing left to unlock in it, but soon there will be an old classic joining the ranks, and I can't wait for it. Alright, moving on, we now have our second achievement, which is the final chapter in Friday the 13th, the game. An achievement that is only unlocked after you play 1,000 multiplayer matches as Jason. Now, Friday the 13th, the game, is what I believe is called an asymmetrical game, where it's one person versus 7 others. In this case, one Jason versus 7 camp counselors. And the goal of the counselors is to escape the camp, whether it be through driving out by repairing a car or calling the cops. And they have to do this before, well, Jason kills them all. It's honestly a fun game, it just sucks that the people who made it are idiots and, well, did something they weren't supposed to, and now they can't update the game anymore. Now, as for the achievement itself, it's actually a part of a foursome, as there are also achievements for completing 500 matches as Jason and as a counselor, as well as an achievement to complete 1,000 matches as a counselor. But the reason this one is worth the most out of all 4 of them is because the way this game works is that you're not always guaranteed to play as Jason. I mean, if you were in a full 8-person lobby, you would only have a 1 in 8 chance to become him. But luckily, there is a way around it since matches and private lobbies do count. But even then, much like with the rare replay, you're still in for the long haul. So get together with someone who needs 1,000 matches as a counselor and have at it. Now, how the matches should go is that your partner will tell you where he spawned in, you teleport over to where he is, kill him, and then there you go. Now just rinse and repeat until all 1,000 matches are done. Now, since this achievement was so long and boring, I tried to look for anything I could cut corners on, and I actually figured out which map has the shortest intro, which is Crystal Lake Small, and which Jason has the shortest outro, which is Part 5 Jason, as well as a bunch of other factors that I actually ended up putting into a guide, since the only other one that was available while I was doing this wasn't really a guide, just a guy telling you how long it would take to unlock this achievement. Now, the last thing I will say about this achievement is that because of its requirement of such minimal input, it's definitely best to find something else to fill the time with, whether it be watching a TV show, watching a movie, or I'm pretty sure even the guy I was doing it with was reading a book. As for me, I watched the entirety of Mike Tyson Mysteries for some reason. Great show. Now on to achievement number 3, which is Aggressive Nightmare in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Now, how you unlock this achievement is to survive Aggressive Nightmare mode. Now, I'm assuming everyone here knows how one of these games work. You usually play the role as a security guard at a, sort of Chuck E. Cheese knockoff, and every night the animatronics in it get up and start walking around, and if they get to you, they just kill you. But unfortunately, you are not able to leave your post, so the only way to fend off against these animatronics is to keep an eye on them with the security cameras, and then either close the doors around you to prevent them from getting in, or put on a mask to trick them, or to just flash a flashlight to reset their programming, as well as a whole slew of unique things within each game, like needing to keep an eye on Foxy by using the camera a bunch, or keeping the note box wound up, which leads us to the third game in the franchise. To start off with, this game takes place in a horror attraction at an amusement park, and because of this, at first, there are no animatronics. That is, until the people running the operation find one. And not only is it alive, but it also brought a whole bunch of pissed off ghosts with it. Now, the reason I said all that is because this is, I believe, the only game in the FNAF series where only one animatronic can actually kill you. All the evil spirits kind of just hinder you along the way if you get caught by them. So basically what you need to do to survive the night is get Springtrap, which is the name of the animatronic, as far away from your office as possible by using the audio lures on the cameras. You also have to block off the entrances to the vents, whichever one he is currently in or closest to, since all the vents are basically a direct route to your office. Another gameplay factor is that since you're using such crappy equipment, it will keep constantly breaking down, and you need to keep rebooting it in order to still have a fighting chance. Although every time you do reboot it, you're completely vulnerable. And on top of all this, you also have to stay vigilant against the aforementioned vengeful spirits, since they all are avoidable. And if you do end up getting jump scared by one of them, that's an immediate vent fix you need to do. Now, the reason I described the way this game plays is because the game mode you need to play for the achievement is basically the regular game, but everything is turned up to 11. Everything is breaking down all the time, the ghosts are always basically there, and Springtrap is just non-stop moving. He truly is on a mission to kill you as quickly as possible. And because of that, I am happy to say that we finally have an actually hard achievement on this list, which is pretty funny since I'm pretty sure this is considered the easiest game in the series. But even with harboring that title, this achievement is nowhere near a cakewalk. Now, the key to success is to have Springtrap as far away from your office as possible by juggling him between the 2 top right cameras or the 4 middle main cameras. Now, obviously, this isn't going to work 100%, so you do have to keep an eagle eye out for him, since he not only hides within like each camera, but the cameras themselves are so crappy that you could barely see him. Combined with this, you need to have the vent that he's closest to closed, or else you're just screwed. The same is true when it comes to the phantom animatronics, since if you get hit by just one of them, you're as good as dead, since you need to reboot the ventilation immediately. And staying on the topic of the ventilation, there is a chance that whenever it breaks down, or it's guaranteed, I don't know, that it will cause a fake Springtrap duplication, hallucination, whatever, to come in and throw you off from the real one. Now, when it actually comes down to the rebooting and you have multiple things to reboot, it is quicker to reboot one at a time than hit reboot all. And the best thing to reboot first is the audio system, so that way you have at least a defense still. Like, you can reboot it, go back to the cameras, use it, and then go back to reboot the other stuff. Now, the last major piece of information that I will give in order for you to survive the night is that you not only have to be visually aware where Springtrap is, but you also have to be audioly aware as well, because there is an ambient whistle noise that plays the closer he gets to your office, and the closer he is, the more louder and intense it gets. And you also have to keep an ear out for him banging around in the vents. Now, when I was going for this achievement, I was kind of an idiot with this aspect. This is because I had so many failed attempts that I was just so annoyed that I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna make this better by listening to some music while I do it. And what I ended up listening to was the Rocky IV soundtrack, which I guess isn't really the most appropriate thing for a game like this, but hey, it worked. But even when I was listening to music, I knew that if I managed to get to 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., it was time to turn it off and take the game 100% seriously. And in the end, even with all these tips and whatever else, this achievement still seems to just boil down to a guessing game of random chaotic chance. Alright, here we go with achievement number 4, which is Adventure 4 in Pac-Man Championship Edition 2. And this achievement is unlocked by clearing 6-15 in Adventure mode. Oh, how I love the Pac-Man Championship games, how they take the original formula of the arcade game and just go all in with it. With the huge increase in speed, the awesome ghost chases, the sweet blaring music, it really is a great series, with the goal of trying to get as high a score as you can, just like a true arcade game, or at least that is the goal of the main score attack section of this game. As for this achievement, we must venture on over to Adventure mode. In this mode, you must complete a set of stages and then a boss at the end, with the objective of needing to get a certain amount of score in a certain amount of time, or eat a certain amount of fruit in a certain amount of time. Then there's the boss fights where you need to gain as many extra lives as possible in order to defeat it. And speaking of bosses, that is actually what the achievement is: defeating the last boss in Adventure mode. Now, for how difficult this game is, I will say that the bosses is probably one of the more easier parts, or if not the easiest. And this final boss is no exception, which leads us to the true difficult nature of this achievement, which is actually just getting to the boss. And in order to do that, you must get 222 stars in this mode, which in other words means that you have to get all the stars in every single stage and every single boss. And boy howdy, you're gonna need to sharpen your skills to get this one, because you have to basically play every single level perfectly. I mean, you have to eat as many pellets as you can, get rid of the ghosts as quickly as possible, and if you manage to do all that, you're fine. But if you lose a life, like a single life, you're just better off restarting. And on top of that, in this mode, you don't even get any bonus score for extra lives or extra bombs. Now, one thing that I apparently did while going for this achievement was turn off the music to get, I guess, complete focus on the game, which is kind of just funny considering what I said on the last achievement. But other than that, that's really all I have to say about this achievement. Just keep replaying the levels until you master them all, then once you actually get to the final boss at that point, it should be just an easy win. Okay, next up we have achievement number 5, which is Masterminds in Grand Theft Auto 5. An achievement that is tied to the GTA Online section of this game, and in order to unlock it, you must complete all 3 criminal mastermind challenges in the Doomsday Heist. Oh, Grand Theft Auto 5. I have fond memories of watching that trailer and just being so hyped for this game. Then it came out, and at first, I really loved it. But then eventually it all came crashing down, and, well, I mean, it's not a bad game, but not the greatest of all time that we all thought it was going to be. But after a week, that didn't matter much with the release of GTA Online, and oh, what a release it was. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. GTA 5 was the newest release into the legendary sandbox open-world crime simulator of the Grand Theft Auto series. And other than bringing back the old chaotic mayhem that we all expected, this game also brought the new feature of being able to play as 3 separate characters, and new bank heist missions, like heists that you would actually have to plan out with setup missions and like picking your crew out. This would not only go on to become one of the most successful video games of all time, but also get re-released onto 2 different generations later down the line. But we all know that this game's longevity of 9+ years was not solely because of the single player content, but instead this game's multiplayer, GTA Online, which is a very in-depth type of multiplayer that keeps bringing back players as well as creating new ones every day. I mean, it's so in-depth that people usually say that GTA Online and GTA 5 are separate games. I mean, you're able to own your own cars, own your own apartments, run around the main map, like free roam with all your friends, play missions with each other. It was really fun. I mean, it was basic stuff, but it was still fun to get into a deathmatch and go up against people. And although this game mode started off pretty bare bones, even comparable to GTA 4's multiplayer, it would eventually get so many updates that you don't even know where to start. More game modes, more missions, and finally the most important, heists. Which finally leads us to the topic of this achievement, the Doomsday Heist. A heist that sees you working alongside the government to save America. And you will go up against rogue agents, the Russians, and an AI that has control over juggernauts. Just to name a few obstacles that will be in your way. Now how the actual mission structure goes is that there are 3 acts. There are setup missions, which are just regular missions. There are prep missions, which are done in free mode. And then there's the actual heist, there being 1 at the end of each act. Now for this achievement, there are 3 different challenges that you must complete. 1 for 2-player, 1 for 3-player, and 1 for 4-player. And in order to complete these challenges, you must beat the entirety of the Doomsday Heist, all on hard, all missions in order, and with no deaths between all players. Now before I even get into how I did this achievement, I have to tell a little story first. As I already mentioned, I wasn't the biggest fan of GTA 5, so when it came out on the next-gen systems, I had no, reason really to buy it again. And that's how it was for the longest time until I met someone while boosting the GTA 4 achievements. Now the dude that I met, who unfortunately doesn't play Xbox anymore, wanted to get this achievement. One of his friends was ready to go, but that was only 2 out of 4, so he wanted me to join them, since he knew I had the willpower to get this done. So he went out of his way to buy me this game. But still, we all had to wait, since the old ability to bring your 360 character over to the Xbox One was not available anymore. So starting from scratch, I had to rebuild myself up and get reacquainted with the online mode. And when I was all good and ready, it was time for us to undertake this monumental task. Now to start off with this achievement, you do need a dedicated crew, because one of the requirements is that you cannot join a different crew from the one that you started this challenge with, like their organization or biker club. And our crew was dedicated enough, the only issue was that there was only 3 of us. So when we finally made it to the 4-player challenge, we just had to find someone who was willing to do it, and every time we failed, we would have to keep cycling out through players until we actually found someone who was willing to stay after every failure. Now, one piece of solace that we had when we were doing this was the fact that we were able to get out of having to do the whole thing from the beginning again every time we failed, which was achieved by quitting out of the game before it could save our progress and reset the challenge. But it wasn't always 100% guaranteed to work, because if you weren't quick enough, it would save and you would be screwed. And the other, situation would be if you were dead while you were in your personal vehicle, if your personal vehicle got destroyed, the game would just instantly autosave and you were just screwed. But most of the time it would work, so much to the point that we actually got a little bit too comfortable with it, because one of us decided to play around with C4 and blew us all up, and of course that was one of the times that we couldn't prevent it from restarting. And 2 more pieces of information that kinda helped us out throughout doing this was the fact that although you couldn't die during setup or heist missions, you were able to fail objectives with no penalty. So if we ended up blowing up the car that we needed or letting the guy we were protecting die, we would just reset and continue on from the checkpoint. And when it came to the prep missions in the free roam, you were able to die as many times as you want, whether it be from the other players or the enemy AI. But just to make it as quickly as possible, as well as safe as possible, we would usually go into private lobbies, which I only recently found out is now available to you and you don't have to glitch your way into them anymore. Now, when it came down to the missions themselves, very few of them were actually easy. Some of them were really boring to do, and a vast majority of them were pretty difficult. Now, when it comes to those missions, some of the harder ones that we had struggled with were getting ULP out of the forgery, fighting our way out of the server farm, the hangar shootout, which was a true bitch, the docks hostage shootout where you meet the invisible juggernauts for the first time, putting out the servers on fire, which I wish I could just block out of my memory, escorting ULP with that shitty missile truck, the beginning of the tank mission, which was so hard that we actually found a way through the back way of the scrapyard to skip all the enemies, and of course all the heists themselves, except for maybe Act 2's. Now, even though all those missions were really tough, by the time of our final run of this, we basically got through all of them with no deaths, no issue. We only had one right at the end, which was really bullshit. And I do mean the end, since it was the part in the Act 3 heist where you're running through the missile silo, like the tunnels, and apparently in those tunnels, the crates that are in them, they're explosive. Like, if you accidentally shoot them, they go off. And that's what happened to one of our guys, but luckily we all quit in time, and all we had to do was reset Act 3, and then we were done. Now, there are keys to success to unlock this achievement, the most vital of which is having snacks and body armor in your inventory. Be sure to always use them if you're close to death, and just have maybe sometimes the menu open to eat them, and like spam them if you need to. And another very important piece of information is to keep them always stocked. After every mission, refill yourself all the way. Now, all that stuff is required, but here's just some stuff that we did to try and cut time anywhere we could. Now, I already mentioned the free roam private lobby, but whenever we would go into the actual missions, we would just have the outfits saved to what we owned instead of like what the game gives you, so we wouldn't waste time switching our outfits around. And we would also, when the mission started, just get into whoever had the fastest car and just drive off. And then there was also the stuff that we either bought or already owned to make this as easy as possible. Like getting upgraded weapons such as the sniper rifle with explosive bolts, or just getting a minigun so you could take out the juggernauts easier. We all went out and bought the best attachments for the weapons we were using, as well as removed the suppressors from all of them, so that way they were all firing at peak performance. Some of us even had gun lockers, which allow you to have customized weapon loadouts, so we were able to keep out only our best weapons, which for me was the combat MG, the assault shotgun, the AP pistol, and the special carbine, which was the best assault rifle at the time, but there's probably something else better now. As well as I kept out all the heavy weapons, because honestly they're all useful. But yeah, we would try to do anything that would help us out. Like, if we really needed to during a gunfight go into first person, we would do it. But I will say that out of the many things that we did, the one main thing that probably guaranteed us to victory was the fact that one of us owned a Vigilante. And you could tell by the name that the car is basically the Batmobile, so it's fully armored and fully stocked with rockets. And this not only made vehicle combat much easier, but also combat against enemies who were outside and like next to vehicles that could be blown up. I only wonder how much easier this would have been if we all had one. Alright, that is everything except for just one last tip I want to throw out there, which is something that I personally struggled with a little, which involved the ladders. Now, I don't know how to properly explain this, so I'll just say where it happened the most, which is the ULP Foundry mission, in which if you are the lookout guy, like on top of the water tower, be sure to be as like soft as possible when you're leaving, moving towards the ladder, because if you're not careful, you'll end up falling off of it because your character just will not go for the ladder. He'll just try and jump off. And we lost a game like that once when I died from that. There's probably a few more instances like that, but that's the most prominent one I can think of. Or at least that was an issue, because of course when I tried to get footage for this part, it didn't work. Like, it actually worked. It actually went to the ladder and didn't drop me off. But I guess the bottom line is just be careful trying to get onto ladders if you're trying to go onto them from the top, or just be really careful against any ledge, because you don't want to be an idiot like me and fall and die, then have to restart because of it. So yeah, that's everything I gotta say about this achievement. Is it just me, or did anyone else notice the funny number coincidences on this list? Like how achievement number 3 is in FNAF 3, achievement number 4 is Adventure 4, and achievement number 5 is in Grand Theft Auto 5. It's kinda weird how that all lined up the way it did. Up next, we have achievement number 6, which is Energizer in Outlast. An achievement that is unlocked if you are able to finish the game in insane mode without reloading the camera's batteries. Now, Outlast itself is a game where you explore an abandoned asylum full of monstrous, mutated humans, and you basically have to hide from them because you can't fight back. So yeah, you explore the asylum, try and get through your way through, only armed with your camera, which allows you to see in the dark with its night vision. And you end up hiding under beds, lockers, wherever you can, to uncover the truth of whatever happened at this asylum. And the achievement is basically to play the game on its hardest difficulty, which the enemies are at their deadliest and can basically find you without even trying. But the big kicker is that you only have one life. So yeah, if you screw up once, it's all the way back to the beginning of the game with you. But since the developers didn't think that was hard enough, the second part of the achievement is to not reload your camera batteries, which basically means you only have a limited set use of night vision throughout the entire game. Now, what did I do for this achievement to unlock it? Basically, what I did was look up a video guide and follow it to a T as much as I could. And, well, that kind of, in the end, really worked really well. And basically what would happen is I keep redoing it, get to a section, die probably, then just get back to that same section, then continue the video from there. I mean, I did it so many times that I basically ended up speedrunning the whole game. And also because of this, all the scares and horrors the game has to offer have kind of been nullified to me. I also had to memorize the dark locations within the game so I didn't use much battery life, especially when I went outside. It's pitch black, so much to the point that using a bit of night vision out there is actually something I had to do, as well as needing to play as stealthily as possible in the sections I was in danger, and also patiently, since I needed to stay in locations where the enemies couldn't get to me or didn't know I was there, and had to wait for them to go away. Another useful thing that I did was never pick up any batteries that I found, since I never wanted to accidentally reload the camera. I also needed to memorize who could kill me in one hit and who couldn't, because I do remember the guide that I used, you do get hit once. There were also some enemies that I had to learn how to completely bypass so I could just skip them and just move on. And speaking of enemies, Chris Walker, the guy that you meet at the beginning, is an asshole. He's the enemy you encounter the most and the one I mostly died to. But that's not to exclude enemies like the twins or the wall rider. Honestly, all of them are pretty annoying to deal with and stressful, since if you make one wrong move, it's all over. Then we have the final parts of the game, like when you drop your camera, then get it back, and when you get it back, there's a bunch of enemies there, and you have to run for your life in a dark room, but it's actually best to use your night vision here, since it's the last time in the game that you actually need it. Another thing that I did was collect the final file before the end, like the one at the machine, so that way I didn't accidentally collect it instead of pressing the button when I was being chased. Then we have the jump at the end, which apparently is a game killer, because if you don't jump just right, you fall to your death and, well, game over. But luckily I was able to jump and not have any issues. And in the end, thankfully this is kind of a short game, so although the achievement is still very annoying, it overall is not that bad, honestly. Although I did hear from a friend that the sequel is much longer and harder, but also not as good. Alright, time for achievement number 7, which is Sega Superstar in Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. And to unlock this one, you must earn your triple star license. Who would have thought that a sequel to a mediocre Mario Kart ripoff would end up being one of the best racing games of all time? I mean, this game just feels so good to play with its drift system, the great tracks that it has, the great music, and the added bonus of the actual transform of it, like the transformed part of it, with you going to the skies and to the waters. And it's also neat to see many familiar faces amongst Sega's ranks, such as Sonic obviously, Crazy Taxi, and Nights into Dreams, and even Super Monkey Ball. On top of that, this game also has many multiple modes instead of just the regular Grand Prix, such as the time trials, the mission mode, and of course the battle arena. So now about the achievement itself, which is to basically get the best license in the game. And your licenses go up based off of how much of the game you have completed. Like, you start off with a C, then you go to B, A, 1 star, then finally triple star. So basically what this achievement is asking you to do is 100% the game. And in order to do this, you must complete all the Grand Prix on the hardest difficulty, both regular and mirror, get all the stars in World Tour, unlock all the characters, beat all the staff ghosts and time trials, unlock a vast majority of the stickers, and even a little bit extra after that. And these requirements is how it became the only 360 achievement officially on this list. Now, honestly, although this is a hard achievement, definitely, the only part that I found truly difficult was the time trials, but I'll get into why later. Okay, so the main key to success throughout all the game modes is to master the drift and stunt mechanics. If you can do this, then you're golden. Now, the drifting is self-explanatory, as whenever you do so for long enough, you can get a mini boost. And if you drift for long enough, you can get a level 3 or level 2 mini boost, and those are very helpful. And the drifting can also be done while in the air or on a boat, which in the boat it's basically the same as the car, but when you're in the air you actually have to actually fly sideways, and it could be pretty tough to get a hang of it, but once you do, you're good. Now for the stunts is whenever you're about to do a jump, like you're in the air, you can use the right stick to move your car around and do stunts, which also give you mini boosts, which are integral to beating everyone. Now, before you even start this achievement, one of the things that you must do, one requirement, is that you have to go to the Grand Prix and complete all the cups on hard to unlock expert for everything else. Since without expert you can't get all the World Tour stars or the highest level of ghosts in the time trials. And I say to do this because obviously it would suck real hard to do everything on hard, then just do the Grand Prix, then unlock a whole new difficulty, then have to go through everything again, which is a mistake I almost ended up making, although I did catch myself quick enough. Alright, with that note out of the way, let's actually talk about the Grand Prix. And honestly, the Grand Prix are probably the easiest part of the game, since the AI aren't complete unrelenting monsters like in Mario Kart, and the items themselves aren't as debilitating. Since there are no items that can fuck you over when you're in first place, and the fact that the All-Star item, which is obviously this game's equivalent to the Star, is not powerful enough to completely screw you over either. I mean, the best ways to get first every time or like a high placement, you just gotta be smart with your items both offensively and defensively, and you're good. Place blowfishes onto boosts or transformation areas, smuggle the All-Star or get lucky and get it in a high place, take advantage of air sections and get out of water sections as soon as possible, use the All-Star and water sections, try to screw over the current top scoring AI if you have a chance. Don't always try to go for the shortcuts or super items, and mastering the drift, as I stated before, and you honestly should stay far ahead of the pack most of the time. And that's basically all there is to the Grand Prix. Next up is the World Tour mode, which is basically mission mode. Like, you'll select a mission, get stars for completing it on whatever difficulty you're doing it on, then be able to unlock more of the missions, as well as, like, characters and I believe maps. No, not maps. And these missions range from doing basic races to drift challenges, boost challenges, and traffic challenges. Now, the key to completing World Tour is just to simply keep doing the missions over and over again until you aced it and get the 4 stars within it. as repetition is truly key. Now on to the time trials. To start off with, there is some good news, as you only need to do the regular versions of the track, not the mirror versions. But the bad news is that, like I said before, these trials are still the hardest thing to do for this achievement, since you must learn each track and the quickest way to traverse them, and you need to have the drift mastered for this, or don't even bother trying. Now you can use any character in mods that you work best with, but it is possible to get them all done as standard Sonic, as I was able to do all but one of them as him. Now the best strategies that I had used were to try and imitate the ghosts as much as I could and have a level 3 boost ready combined with all of my item boosts used at the same time by holding down the A button right before I'd cross the finish line and reset the lap. Now I will say that the tracks in this game are overall really well designed. You can get into a groove with them and just pass all these time trials, but there is one that is just completely awful. And the worst track in the game is the Billy Hatcher map due to its awful turns, bad water part, and the final section is just downright horrendous. I mean, this map was so bad that I had to change from Sonic to Shadow to beat it. Oh, and the Burning Rager stage also blows. Finally, we have the stickers. These being mini challenges that you must complete. And these challenges range from getting first in a race 10 times, or hitting an opponent 100 times with snowballs, or winning a race on a certain track while playing as a certain character. Now, most of these stickers will come naturally. Others you will have to play multiplayer or the battle modes to get. And surprisingly, some of the multiplayer ones are actually obtainable, since there are actual lobbies playing the racing part. Unfortunately, there's no one ever playing the battle part, so you have to find a way to do those ones on your own. And one final note I'll say about the stickers is that you don't actually have to get every single one. You only need most of them, which is good news because there's one that you need 4 controllers for, which is complete bullshit. Anyway, in the end, after completing all those requirements, you are still not done and probably only at 95%. Now you have to go for a bit of an extra mile and complete a few ghosts on mirror mode, unlock more mods, or get a few more stickers to finally push you over to the 100% threshold. And if you truly are desperate enough, you can get the DLC, and it comes with a new character that you can unlock all the mods for, a new set of stickers, as well as a new track that you can beat all the time trial ghosts on. And even after all that, it still probably won't unlock, because it didn't for me and many others. So to remedy that, just start up a race, time trial, or world tour event, and it should pop after you finish it. Alright, next on the list is achievement number 8, Personal Decorator in Call of Duty Black Ops 3. And how you unlock this one is by earning all the campaign decorations. Oh, Black Ops 3, the game that saw Advanced Warfare's new advanced movement system and said, we can do better than that, by just saying fuck it and giving everyone jetpacks. Now, I'll be honest, I know Call of Duties are mainly known for their multiplayer, but I wasn't really into the multiplayer in this game. I kinda just played it and that was it. I don't really know how badly the jetpacks screwed it up or made it better. Yeah, the multiplayer was just fine. But on the other hand, you had this game's incarnation of the Zombies game mode, which is often considered the best zombies of the whole series, even if it is the first one where you need to look up guides just to survive. But I digress. This achievement is about the campaign, which is unfortunately not one of the series' better outings. Or at least I should say the story really sucks, because the campaign gameplay itself is fine, if not a bit repetitive, but you could probably say that about any first-person shooter. But regardless, this campaign sees you far off into the future of, I believe, the 2080s or 90s, where, like, cyber soldiers exist now and you have become one of them. And with these enhancements, you are now able to take down enemies in new ways, like being able to control their robotic systems or making them implode. But these systems are susceptible and your teammates all get infected by a rogue AI, so the game basically boils down to taking out your teammates one by one to stop the infection. But then it turns out, oh, this is actually all a dream that some guy's having while he dies, or something stupid like that. And then you just top that off with the fact that this barely has anything to do with the last 2 Black Ops games, like no connections at all. And then, yeah, that's why this one sucks. But my tangent about the story aside, this is probably one of the more forgettable Call of Duties, definitely. It's just the normal Call of Duty fare of shooting people, except now they're robots. Alright, with that all out of the way, let's move on to the actual achievement itself. And the achievement involves you getting all 12 of the campaign awards. And I'm just gonna go ahead and list off all 12 of these. First up is Master of Arms, which requires you to get all the campaign weapons, attachments, and camouflages. Next up is Dedicated to Excellence, which requires you to fully upgrade all cyber cores. Next up is Armament Superiority, or Armament, I guess, which requires you to unlock and purchase all weapons, lethals, tacticals, and tactical rigs. Then we have Heroic Service and Legendary Service, which is basically completing the campaign on Veteran or Realistic. Then we have Immortal Flame, which requires you to complete every mission in the game without dying on Veteran. Then we have Chronicler, which is just get all the collectibles. Above and Beyond, which wants you to complete all accolades for all the missions. Duty Calls, which wants you just to complete all campaign challenges. Tried and True, which is earn a score of 35,000 in combat immersion. Grim Reaper, which is just kill 2,000 enemies. And then Full Honors, which requires the player to earn all other campaign decorations. I hope that's the only list I had to read off for this video. Anyway, from that list, you can see that there are actually some easily done things that you'll get naturally on it, like killing 2,000 enemies or just unlocking everything, or getting all the collectibles. I mean, heck, one of them is just literally unlocking the other 11. But just how some are easy to get, some are very hard to get, and others are quite tedious to get. Like, obviously, one of the harder ones is getting through the game on Realistic, which is a new difficulty mode for this game in which literally everything can, like, kill you with one hit. And yeah, it's basically you fighting tooth and nail against the hardest type of enemies with like pinpoint accuracy and whatever else, and if you screw up just once and die, then you're back to the last checkpoint. But one thing that can help you out a bit is the fact that this game allows you to have custom classes in the campaign, so you're able to basically pick the best weapon and stick with it throughout the entire thing. Like I used the BRM LMG, and that really worked for me. And then there's the cyber core abilities that I mentioned earlier and how they could be really useful, like the one that I said makes enemies implode. And then there's apparently also a camo one that you could probably spam. But in the end, this is basically like any other veteran campaign where you just have to stick with it until you beat it. Now, as for completing all the missions on Veteran without dying, that is a different story, because it involves you playing this campaign in co-op, which is something Treyarch decided to add to this campaign for whatever reason. Anyway, to get this, just simply have like a duo, or maybe even more if you really want to, and just basically have one person always stay behind. That way, whenever the person up front goes down, you can just have them crawl to you and get revived or respawn back in. And it's really not that hard. Then we have what I believe is considered the hardest thing to do overall, which is getting 35,000 points in the combat simulator. And of course, the way this thing works is that the higher difficulty you get, the more points you would get for every enemy you kill. And I'm pretty sure the only way you can get even 35,000 points is by doing it on the hardest difficulty. So basically what this boils down to is doing the entirety of the combat simulator on Realistic. But unfortunately, I have no real tips for this part, because when I was going for this achievement, one of my friends who was also going for this achievement showed me how I could basically entirely skip this part. Now, I don't know exactly how to do this or if it's still even in the game, but basically what we would do was enter the combat simulator, then somehow leave it, but it would still think we were in it, and then all you would have to do is re-enter it, set it to Realistic, and then you were invincible. And you could basically, yeah, just go through everything without being hit or killed once. And then yeah, you were done. Alright, that knocks out all the hard stuff, so all that's left to talk about is the tedious stuff. Starting with the accolades, which were basically mini challenges that you had to do within every mission. Challenges like ending a chase within 45 seconds or defeating 3 enemies with a grenade. I mean, there are probably harder ones that took a long time to get or a few tries, but I can't think of any. I mean, these really do just boil down to replaying the missions over and over again until you get them all done. Next, we have the camos, which is basically getting, I believe, either 1,000 or 1,500 kills with every single weapon, which at first doesn't sound too bad, but then you realize there's like 32 weapons in the game. Although I do believe that there is a bit of a bone thrown with the sidearms and the rocket launchers having less. Like 500, I believe, or 200. Now, with the camos, you would expect the solution to just be keep replaying the campaign missions over and over again, maybe pick the one with the most amount of enemies until you get them all done. But in reality, you actually don't need to do that because one of the missions, the 7th one, I believe, has a part that has infinitely spawning enemies. It's in the part where the gigantic wall gets put down and you get the spike launcher in the back right. There's gonna be continuous enemies just funneling through the doors. So then you think, okay, so just go to that mission, go to that part, and just keep killing enemies until you get all the weapons done. Unfortunately, it's not that simple either. Now, the reason I think this is going to be tricky is a bit hard to explain, but I'm going to try my best. Now, this game seems to track your progress in the campaign like the last mission you did. So if you were to do like 5 missions, then redo the 3rd one, and then hit resume campaign, it would go back to the 5th one, which I believe is the same for all other Call of Duties, but the way this one seems to work is that whenever you go back to replay a mission, it doesn't save your progress unless you do the entire mission. So you can't play up to that part of the mission, get a bunch of kills for one of your weapons, like complete it, and then quit to then just swap it out for another weapon. It won't keep the progress. You would instead have to go to that part of the mission, get as many kills as you can, then complete the mission, which is just not... It's not convenient at all, since you would have to keep replaying it over and over again instead of just being put to that one part continuously. Now, as for me, I somehow managed to get lucky, and my campaign progress ended up stopping on the 6th mission. So what I basically did was complete the 6th mission. Then once I got to the 7th mission, I just stuck there and got all the weapons done. Now, one last thing I'll say about this is that when you beat the campaign, you get put back onto the 1st mission. So I don't know if continuously playing the campaign back to the 7th mission will actually fix this issue. Because, well, I never did it, but I wouldn't be surprised if that actually ends up working. But regardless, this is probably going to be the thing that you spend the most time getting, and once you do all the camos for the weapons, then boom, you got the achievement. Alright, here we have achievement number 9, which is Head Counselor in Friday the 13th, the game. And for this achievement to be unlocked, you must play 1,000 matches as a counselor. Now, unfortunately, this is basically a repeat offender, and everything that I said about the other achievement for playing 1,000 matches as Jason basically applies here. The only real difference is that you're the one now telling Jason where you spawned in at so he can come over and kill you, and that this achievement is much more obtainable if you were just playing the main game, since you're always bound to play as a counselor. Now, because of how boring this entry is, I'm gonna go ahead and sneak in an unofficial achievement here to replace it. And that achievement is The Shadows Rushed Me in Max Payne 3. And in order to get this one, you must unlock and complete New York Minute Hardcore mode. Oh, Max Payne 3, the game that I bought literally just because it had a Rockstar logo on it. Because my logic was, it's Rockstar, they made Grand Theft Auto, so it has to be good. And, well, I wasn't wrong. In the end. I mean, even though my kid self had no clue what was going on story-wise in this game, I still had fun with it. And yes, eventually I would find myself playing the first 2 games, and they're pretty good too. although I do think the second one is a bit overrated. But anyway, Max Payne 3, just like its predecessors, is a third-person action shooter game. And this game sees Max in a radically new location of Sao Paulo, Brazil, as he is now the bodyguard for a family of wealthy elites. And in true Max Payne fashion, there is trouble in paradise when some of the family members start getting kidnapped, leading to Max needing to save them as well as expose the bigger conspiracy at play. But enough about that, let's move on to the actual achievement and the 2 steps to completing it. And the first step, as described, is to simply unlock New York Minute Hardcore mode. And to do this, you must first unlock New York Minute mode, which is not that hard at all, as you simply just need to beat the story once on any difficulty. Then you have to beat New York Minute mode itself, in which you have to go through every single level individually and beat them while under a timer, and you cannot die or fail an objective, because if you do, then you have to restart the whole level. But I will say that before you even attempt either version of New York Minute mode, that it would be best to get all your weapons gold, because doing that will give them more damage. And trust me, you need every advantage you can get for this. Anyway, after you have conquered New York Minute mode, it is now time to move on to step 2 of this achievement, which is beating New York Minute mode hardcore. And as the name implies, hardcore mode is not just limited to one mission, but instead the entire game. And now you must beat all 14 missions back to back all in one go without once dying, failing an objective, or having a friendly character be killed, all while being timed throughout the entire thing. Now to start off, I should probably properly explain the timer. Now, I believe it starts off with 1 minute and goes up every time you get a kill, with body shots I believe being worth 5 seconds and headshots being worth 6 seconds. And there's also other factors like explosion kills, which I believe is worth a lot as well. Now obviously you don't want it to go all the way down or else you will lose, but luckily there's 2 reasons why this will probably never happen. The first reason is because the timer stops or pauses when you're going to the unskippable cutscenes, which, let's be honest, if it didn't, that would have been complete bullshit. And the second reason is due to it being continuous and the amount of enemies that you end up killing throughout each mission. By the time of the 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th or 6th mission, it gets so high that it really doesn't matter that much anymore. After a certain point, you will be able to take more of your time. So now you could shift the timer to one of your lesser worries and focus in on what matters most, your own survival. Now the keys to success is to be as precise and swift with your aiming as possible, since you want to get through every enemy engagement as quickly as you can, especially in the slow-mo parts where if you miss just like one enemy, you end up dying. Be smart with your bullet time usage, always have some ammo left over, get as many painkillers as possible. I actually looked up a guide to find where all of them were, and of course be smart with their usage, like if you're nearly dead, use them, but if you're only like half dead or below, don't use them. And also be proactive against the little hindrances, such as finding out how to turn off the crappy laser sights when you get those types of weapons, which is by pressing the back button. And one final note is always be careful against like ledges, because if you accidentally walk off it or jump off it or whatever, you're just dead. It's over. Now, one saving grace that this game has while going for this achievement is the second chance in the form of the near-death painkiller mechanic, where if you lose all of your health but still have at least 1 bottle, you can take down whoever got the last shot on you and, well, live. But you have to be very vigilant about where your enemies are and how much ammo you have in your clips, because if you end up going into painkiller slowdown mode and don't have a shot on whoever took you down, or have no more ammo, you're just dead. I know this since it happened to me a few times. Another tip that I could think of is probably looking up a guide and following it as closely as possible, similar to what I said in the Energizer achievement, you know, to find out what the best course of action is, like where to hide, where the enemies come from, whatever else. I mean, there are definitely parts of this game where you're gonna need to look up what to do to survive. I mean, I'm pretty sure that I did this in the beginning, but eventually I did the mission so many times that eventually I just memorized them, so eventually I just started brute forcing it. But yeah, that's really all I could say for this achievement, other than what I believe what was the hardest parts of it, which were the sniper battle in Chapter 3, the dock shootout in Chapter 5, as well as the boat chase in Chapter 5. Anytime you're in the favelas, moving in on out-of-view enemies while they have the shot on you, anytime going up against a heavy enemy, the boss fights, especially the final one, the terminal shootout, destroying the APC in Chapter 11, and the whole runway finale where my successful attempt was almost thwarted not only by nearly dying during the chase, but also by almost letting the plane take off because I kept missing my shots with the grenade launcher. This brings us to the 10th and final achievement, Tales of Glory in Deadlight Director's Cut. And what you have to do to unlock this achievement is beat the game in Nightmare mode. Now, Deadlight is a 2D action platformer set during like a 1980s or 1990s zombie apocalypse. And it follows the story of Randall as he tries to infiltrate, like, I believe a government facility to save, I want to say his wife or his kid. And let's see what else. Oh, the game tries to be, I guess, artsy by having heavy shadings and all the zombies not actually be zombies but like shadow creatures. Yeah, if you can't tell already, I'm not the biggest fan of this game. So much so that most of this gameplay isn't even mine, since I didn't rebuy this game for this video. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. To start this off, I actually had played this game previously, well, the original version of this game, when it was a game with gold, like a free game, however far back that was. And, well, I played it, and I really wasn't even that big into it back then, but it wasn't too bad in the achievements department, so I ended up getting them all. Fast forward ahead to when Game Pass became a thing, and well, one day while browsing the games on it, I found this version, the director's cut version of Deadlight on it, and I thought that it would be just as easy as the original version because I expected it not to have any new achievements in it, but boy was I wrong. Now, it did have all 30 of the original achievements from the original game, but now there were 2 new ones, one each for the 2 new game modes. An achievement to defeat 200 enemies in a crappy new survival mode, which was only easy because of a glitch spot. And then there was this achievement to beat Nightmare mode. And much like the previous Outlast and Max Payne 3 achievements, it's essentially a do the game without dying challenge, but this time with checkpoints. So whenever you get to a new chapter, which there are 3 of them, if you were to die, you would get put back to the beginning of whichever chapter you were on, instead of being brought all the way back to the beginning of the game. So then you might be wondering, why is this achievement so difficult if you get checkpoints? Well, I'll be honest, 2/3 of this game isn't half bad, but the other 1/3 will kick your ass hard. In other words, it isn't really Chapter 1 or Chapter 3 that makes this hard, it's Chapter 2. Chapter 1 has a few semi-difficult parts that I remember dying a few times at, but nothing too egregious, while Chapter 3 I remember being a joke and only dying once in it. Overall, both are short and easy and can be breezed right on through. But then we have Chapter 2, which is not only so unnecessarily long, but it's just also unfairly difficult. With an entire section in the sewers avoiding traps, then when you finally get up to the top, you are chased down by a helicopter shooting at you with a minigun. And it's just the amount of times that I died at the ladder due to this game's slippery controls just still makes me mad to this day. I mean, there's one specific part that's been burned into my mind, which is when you're climbing over a wall or a fence and how your character can end up basically getting stuck on it. And how infuriating it is to die due to this game's poor controls just makes me happy that I never have to play this game again. Anyway, those were the big things, but there were other little annoying hindrances that got me killed, such as you not being able to have any health or stamina upgrades. I mean, there was one time where I survived the helicopter onslaught just to die to a zombie immediately after, since I had no health left. And if I remember correctly, there was also a jump that you had to make at the end of Chapter 2 right into an enemy with a gun that I also died at. And although I hated this game more and more every time I attempted this achievement, I just wanted to get it done out of sheer determination to fully complete this game before it was removed from the Game Pass. But in the end, I look at an event like this as one of the reasons I don't play games just for gamerscore anymore. I mean, I replayed a game that I already didn't like the first time around just to end up hating it even more. But yeah, I guess that's a good message to go out on. Play what you want to play, not what you have to play.
A choice I can live with. I'm ready.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you haven't already, be sure to check out part 1 and maybe some of my other videos. I guess that's it. Until next time. It's funny how half of the achievements in this video basically boiled down to beating the game without dying, while the other two are basically 100%ers.